what the heck is going on with the volcanic activity in Suðurnes, and more on this episode of the Reykjavik Newsdesk. First up on the Reykjavik Newsdesk. So by the time you're watching this, a volcano may have already erupted on the Reykjanes Peninsula. Or maybe it didn't. Either way, later on in this episode, I'm going to give you links to 2 live streams where you can monitor the area yourself or watch the eruption in real time, whichever applies. But for now, let's go over what got us to this point and where things could go from here. So, Fagradalir. You likely are very familiar with this name because of the eruptions in 2022 and in 2021, where we saw very pretty lava plumes erupting in an area that posed no threat to infrastructure or human life. And while remote, this area was also accessible, giving it the name a tourist eruption. Now, Reykjanes is always beset with earthquakes. Well, the whole country is on account of the fault line that runs through the middle of the country. But last Tuesday, things took a turn for the serious. On Tuesday, the earthquakes became more frequent and more intense, with some 6,500 quakes reported by Friday morning, some with a magnitude between 4 and 6 in the area between Fagradalir and Keilir. The land around the epicenter of these quakes began to rise, and the epicenter of the earthquakes themselves began to move closer to the surface of the Earth. By Friday morning, the magma was reportedly half a kilometer from the surface of the Earth. So all this looks pretty familiar, yeah? Well, it certainly did to our experts too, some of whom within 24 hours were saying that we were going to see an eruption within the next few hours or days. Here's the thing about earthquakes and volcanoes in relation to one another. In the build-up to an eruption, you will feel a lot of earthquakes, a lot of very strong earthquakes, and very frequently. And then suddenly, nothing. Suddenly there's silence. And this lulls you into a false sense of security because this means that an eruption is imminent. And to be honest, as someone who grew up somewhere without any earthquakes or volcanoes, I find, whoa, just had an earthquake just now. As someone who grew up without earthquakes and volcanoes, I find both of them pretty terrifying. Earthquakes probably more so. I mean, it's not like lava is going to pour over the Reykjavik Peninsula anytime soon, but earthquakes, yeah, we definitely feel them, as you just saw. Fortunately, if there's one thing that we excel at here in Iceland, it's earthquake and volcano preparedness. We have scientists who are monitoring the Earth around the clock. They in turn coordinate with the civil protection authorities, who also in turn coordinate with the police and the rescue squads. All these different groups work together to make sure that everyone stays safe, and it gives me a feeling of security at least. Now, if you're watching this video particularly, you may be already in Iceland or on your way here. So let me give you some tips for tourists who want to visit a volcano area. First of all, check the weather forecast and dress for any kind of weather anyway, and pack a lot of food. In this particular area, it's a very long hike. Second, listen to the guides in the area. They know what they're doing. Third, if you think you're a safe distance from the lava, step back a little bit further anyway, and also try to be upwind. I mean, lava, sure, that's dangerous, but so are the gases that come from these eruptions. Fourth, if you bring any pets or small children with you, and why would you, but whatever, please keep an eye on them at all times. And fifth, if you are asked to leave the area, do so immediately. All this being said, these types of volcanoes are very pretty to look at for sure, so I definitely understand the temptation to go into the area and check them out. What's not so pretty will be the eruption of Katla. As I've reported, there's been some significant seismic activity near Mýrdalsjökull, where Katla is located. And now scientists have found that the water of Múlakvísl, which is a river that runs from Mýrdalsjökull, has increased electric conductivity. And this means that there's more minerals in the water that conduct electricity, and this is usually used as a fairly reliable indicator of increased volcanic activity. When Katla erupts, it's not going to be a pretty little fountain of lava. No, it's probably going to be pretty destructive. There's going to be flooding, maybe an ash cloud. It's not going to be nice to look at, and it's the eruption that we've all been dreading for years now. But anyway, back to Fagradalir. There are 2 live streams that have been set up by the national broadcast service RÚV, and they're pointed at the area where the eruption is occurring or is likely to occur, and I've linked to them in the description below. So you can check them out, you can monitor the area, you can watch the eruption at any time from wherever you are in the world. Now, the Newsdesk is a twice weekly show, so I won't be doing daily updates on this, but what I can promise you is detailed, in-depth coverage, as always, and also I might be doing something fun with this later on. We'll just have to see. But anyway, in other news in Iceland this week, a cruise ship near Akureyri has been disturbing residents on account of its emissions. Now, this cruise ship has been parked in Eyjafjörður, which is where Akureyri is, and residents in Akureyri have been disturbed by the emissions coming out of this ship, and they've been reporting a bad smell. Even the mayor has complained about this. Well, reporters contacted the ship, and they say that these emissions is just steam. It's just harmless steam, and that the reason why it's been puffing out all this steam is because their heating system is malfunctioning. Whatever the substance that is coming out of the cruise ship, let me just say that if you're planning on visiting Iceland by cruise ship, don't. Nobody here likes them, and it's not just because cruise ships dump hundreds of people off in some of our smallest towns. It's not because they blast their horns and block the view from the harbor. It's also because cruise ships are incredibly polluting. So much so that there's an entire Wikipedia page devoted to cruise ship pollution in Europe. So please, if you plan on visiting Iceland, do so by airplane, which is a 100% clean, pollution-free way to visit the country that has absolutely no impact on the climate whatsoever. A department head at the Red Cross has pushed back against the rhetoric that asylum seekers are causing a strain on our infrastructure. Now, that asylum seekers are a burden on the Icelandic infrastructure is rhetoric that you will hear from some right-wing voices in this country, but the facts of the matter don't actually add up to back up this claim at all. As Marín Þórsdóttir of the Red Cross pointed out, there are some 1.7 million tourists who came to the country last year, and they required accommodation and healthcare. There are also some 17,000 immigrants in this country who moved here at some point or another. Meanwhile, Iceland has granted international protection to some 3,500 people. So they actually comprise a very tiny portion of the people who live in this country and use our infrastructure. So it's good to see someone put the facts of the matter in the public discourse. Now, this is a fun little story. You know about the Rainbow Street in Reykjavik, for sure, right? Well, Reykjanes decided to one-up us, and they've painted the longest rainbow street in the country. It's some 400 meters long, and the mayor says that it's here to stay. What I like about this story is I like imagining that some other town will try to one-up Reykjanes, and that'll set off this chain reaction where towns all over the country are trying to one-up each other with progressively longer rainbow streets until Route 1, the highway that circles the country, just becomes one long rainbow highway. It's unlikely to happen, but it's fun to think about. So remember when I reported that Justin Trudeau visited Iceland and he spent some time in downtown Reykjavik? Well, it's very likely that he hung out with our mayor, Dagur Eggertsson, and if they had anything in common to talk about, it's likely their love of Taylor Swift. Here we see on July 6th at 1:13 in the morning, Justin Trudeau replies to Taylor Swift's tweet about her ongoing world tour, saying, quote, "It's me, hi. I know places in Canada would love to have you, so don't make it another cruel summer. We hope to see you soon," end quote. Wow, a lyrical reference there. Nice job, Justin. Well, at 2:23 in the afternoon on the same day, our mayor quote tweeted this same Taylor Swift tweet saying, quote, "Dear Taylor Swift, that sounds great. On behalf of the people of Reykjavik, I would welcome you to my city as the perfect stopover at the end of the tour. As the mayor of Reykjavik, I would personally ensure that you would have a wonderful time. We would love to see you here," end quote. Okay, no lyrical references, but still not too shabby. So both Dagur and Justin are apparently Swifties, and now you know that too. Lastly, and a great example of caveat emptor, there's a guest house here in Reykjavik that has been charging people 2,500 ISK for a half-liter glass of beer. But what I thought was really interesting is how these beers are described. Here's a shot of the menu. These are described as 4 local craft beers. Viewer, they are not craft, and one of them, Carlsberg, is not local. It's a Danish import. Gull, Brio, and Boli are not craft beers by any stretch of the imagination, and you're not likely to be charged $2,500 for a glass of it anywhere else in town. In fairness, though, once attention was drawn to this matter, the owner said that he would be bringing the price back down to 1,500 kroner per beer. And my advice is never to pay this much for a glass of beer anyway. If you can, go to one of the government-owned alcohol stores and buy your beer there, not the grocery store. The beer you see in the grocery store is either alcohol-free or has almost no alcohol in it because of our alcohol laws. You have to go to a government-owned store to get your beer. And that's all I have for you today on the Reykjavik News Desk. Be sure to like and subscribe. And just as a reminder, the next single topic video, which is about the cultural and political divide between urban and rural Icelanders, will be coming out July 17th, barring unforeseen circumstances. But this is a video that is decided by a viewer poll, which was put up on my Patreon, and patrons vote and decide what single topic I cover in my single topic videos. Furthermore, on July 22nd, is my next Ask Me Anything session. And that's a great old time where patrons, we all get together and folks, well, ask me anything, as the name would suggest, about myself, about Newsdesk, about Reykjavik, about Iceland, about whatever comes to mind. But mostly we just hang out and have a really good time. It's always a lot of fun, and I hope to see you there. Both of these things are things that you can participate in through my Patreon, which is linked in the description below. Which reminds me, I want to thank Corinne Vasquez, Marion Ward, Christopher Hunter, Marion Moores, Kimberly McDaniel, Iceman98, and Octavia Hrun Jonsdottir for being patrons on the $20 level, Ian Kingsley and Laura Johnson for being patrons on the $15 level, and Hafstein Himmellomi Reginusson, Stephen Ellis, and Vivi Carvalho Schaffner for being patrons on the $10 level. You folks rock. That's all from me at Newsdesk. Be good to each other.